So today we're going to see a few more important topics from Postman. And the first thing is we'll see how we can upload file. So how we can test an API and through which we can upload the file. So sometimes we can see some scenarios we're trying to upload the file on the web page, but internally basically it's calling an API, and that API will actually uploading the file. So now we'll see how we can upload the file through API. Okay. And first of all, we should have such kind of API. So then only we can test that API. So we will see how we can set up this API, and then we will see how we can test that through Postman tool. So I'll give you one simple sample API, and you can just set up that API, and so that we can get the this particular API which is available, and we will able to upload the file. So for that, I'm just going to share a small jar file. You can just go to C drive or somewhere, and you can keep this jar file anywhere else. And just I'm going to share you this particular file, and go here. And this is a one file upload REST API .jar. So this is the file I'm going to share, and you can just have this file somewhere in C drive or D drive, wherever you want. So just you need to open this location, and wherever you placed the jar file, just open this. And here you have to just run one command, which is java-jar, and then file upload REST API.jar. So you can just run the jar file, and this will automatically start your API. So once you execute this command, it will start your jar file. So this is basically developed in Spring Boot application. So it will start your jar file. So once it is started, you can just minimize this window. Don't close this window. If I just close this window, your API will stop running. So you have to just minimize this window once you run this command. Okay, so once you minimize, then you have to open the browser. And on the browser, you can just browse localhost :8080. So this is a port number. On this port number, your API will run. So now we can see a GUI application. So this is the application you are able to see once you start running your API. And this is a UI. So through the UI also, we will able to upload the single file, and we can upload the multiple files. So here you can test this UI functionality. But actually this should happen through API. Okay. So now we need to know what is the URLs of API. So if you want to upload a single file, we have to use one URL here. We have to send a post request. And let me just give the URL of this application. And this is a URL for uploading single file. And to upload the multiple files, we have another URL. So that is also post request, which we have to send. Okay, so this is a UI application, and the same application we have APIs. So both are post request. And if you want to upload a single file, then you have to use this URL along with the post request. And if you want to upload multiple files, then you have to use the second URL. So this is also a post request. So we can do by using this UI, and we have to do through API. So if you do here, this is a UI testing. So that's a different thing. We don't need this UI, but we have to do this through the API request. Okay. So here the command is just a Java command, java-jar, and then specify the name of the file. So I will anyway provide the document for this step by step how we can execute, and you can just go to the document and just run it. Okay. So this is an API which is developed by using Spring Boot application. So file upload API, and we are using the jar file. Actually, the entire application is bundled into jar file. And if you have a jar file, we can directly run that application. So here we're just running the jar file, which will start your API. Okay, now currently my API is up and running. And once it start up and running, so we'll able to see the UI of that application. And also we will able to browse these URLs. Through these URLs, we are trying to upload the files, and not through UI. So through the API request, we are going to upload the files. Okay, that's our context here. Fine. So now, yes, we should have a Java installed before that. Okay, if we have a Java, then only you will able to run the jar file. So you need to install Java first, and then you can run the jar file. Okay. So now let's see how we can upload the file by using this API request. Let's go to Postman, and here I'm going to create a new collection. Okay, so here I'm giving some name called file upload. So inside this file upload, let me create a new request, and two types of request I'm going to create. One is uploading single file, the other one is uploading multiple files. I'll say single file upload. And here we have to send a post request. Select the post. And then this is the URL. Okay, so well, uploading the file, we have to browse the file, right? So where we have to specify the file. So normally what you will do, if you still want to do UI, we will just click on the choose file option here, and then we will browse the file. But when you do this through API, we have to use one option called go to body section, and here you can see something called form data, right? So this is the option which we have to use. Under the body, we have to use something called form data. So here we can specify the file. So which file we want to upload, and the parameter is what? File. This is a key, and the value of the file is what? We need to browse a file. Here you can directly browse a file, or you can directly specify the file which we are going to upload. That is a value. So to do this, we can just specify and browse a file. Let me just select the file here. Just a moment. So we have taken post request, and this is the URL, right? Under body, and we have selected file, and here instead of text, we have to select the file. So there is a small drop down is up here. So the key is file, and that is file format. So we have to select this file here in the drop down. Then here, this option is enabled. Select file. So currently this URL, using this URL, we will be able to upload one single file. So we have to just click on the select files and browse one single file. So let me browse one file, go to C drive, and can just browse any file. Let me just browse test1.txt, open. So now you can see this particular file, test1.txt, and now this URL is work for only one single file. So we have to just browse one single file here. So this is a URL post request, and go to the body form data, and file is test1.txt. So once you click on send, so let me save this first, and then click on send. Okay, so once a request is successfully done, so we got a response code here, 200 is okay, and then file name it is generated, and also it is generated download URL. So where exactly the file is got uploaded. So it is also giving the link, and what type of file you have uploaded and how much size it is giving some information here. So then we can do some kind of validation on this response. And this is a single file upload. And suppose if you want to test multiple files upload, then we can create one more type of request. So let me create one more type of request. Say here, add another request. And here I'll say upload, or you can say multiple files upload. And this is also a post request. And this is the URL which we have to use. Okay, so now go to body section, and here this time we have to browse multiple files. Okay, this time we have to browse multiple files. Okay, so this is the URL, and go to body section and form data. And key is what previously we specified just a file. File is a key. Now here we have to say files. Files. Okay. You have to understand the difference. So previously we have just say only file. We are uploading single file. So key is file. And this is a keyword. Okay. So we should not keep anything else here. This is a keyword. Now multiple files, we have to say files here. Now take the file format, and then this time it is allowing to upload multiple files. So select the files. Now this time I'm taking two files, test1 and test2. Now I have uploaded two files, and now the save the request. So this is the URL, and the body section just say form data files, and uploaded two files, and say send. Okay, so now this time we have uploaded two files, and you can upload any number of files, and based on that the JSON response we will get. So this is the response from the file 1, and this is the file 2, test1.txt, test2.txt. And these are the two download locations, and if you open this link on the browser, you will be able to download the file also. Whichever is uploaded, we can also download the file. Okay, so file type is text or plain, and the size is displayed here. So this is how we can just test, upload the files. And this is also happen through API. Okay. So this will allow only two keys, either file or files. Okay. It will allow only file or files. So you can just use only file or file. There are only two keywords you have to select, and here we are uploading the file, so that we have to select the file option. And some APIs are required some text. So you can just select the text. If you select the text here, you will not able to browse any files. In those cases, you have to specify the path, the complete path you have to specify where exactly the file is available. You have to specify the paths here. And if you want to browse the files, then select the file option, and then you can directly browse a file here. And if you are selecting the text here, then you have to specify the path, the complete path of the file. So that's the basic difference. Okay, so now let me save it. Then, so these are the API through which we are able to upload the files. And this is another type of body. So far we have just seen body, raw section, and then JSON format of request we have sent. And this is another way of sending the request. So form data, which is basically called as a form data. And here we can specify number of keys and a number of values. And these keys and values will go along with the request. So basically these things will go as part of headers. So we have a request header and response header. So whatever the data we specified under form data, so these details will go as part of header, request header. And then a request will be successful. And this is simple and API. Once you have done, then you can just close this command window, and then you are automatically your API will stop running. Okay. So let me just close this window. So basically where exactly these files are uploading this API. So by default, the location is here. So you can just go to C drive, and it will create a new folder automatically. And inside this, the files will be available here. So this is how actually APIs internally works. So let me just delete these files. Let me try to upload one more time. So currently I don't have any files here, and I'm trying to upload the single file. So currently I don't have any files under uploads. So I'm trying to upload the new file, which is single file. I'm just sending the request. So once your request is successfully done, now we can see here in the same location, you can see test1.txt file is available. And then if I open this link also, which will actually download the file from the same location, open the file here, and it will directly download the file here. Okay, this is how internally work. And similarly, if you upload multiple files also, the same files will be saved in the same location here. And this is automatically created by your API. Okay, so this is how we can test the API, and this is the UI. Okay, through the UI also we can upload the file, and we can upload the multiple files. And the same thing we have done through API. Okay. So this is how we can do file upload by using REST API. And this is a one important concept. And the next concept is you have to run the jar file. Okay, so I will provide this jar file and you have to execute through Java command. Then only you will be able to access the URLs. Okay. Now, so let's move on to the next one. So is this upload validation? Yes, you have to again validate the response. Okay, so you have to validate the response contains a file name or not, and what is the file type and size. Again, you have to put all validations under test tab. So here we need to keep all the validations, response body validation, status code validation. These things you have to validate, but you don't need to validate this one. So whether the file is downloaded at the particular location or not. So this is again part of your UI testing. So where we will verify the file is uploaded in the proper location or not on those. But in the as part of API testing, we don't do these things. We will just verify the response part. So this will we will verify as part of API testing. Okay. But in the as part of UI testing, then you need to upload the file here manually and then check whether the file is successfully uploaded or not. Multiple files are uploading or not, and different formats of the files. So all these things you have to check. But in the API part, so we don't touch this UI, just we are sending the request and we will able to verify the response. Okay. So this is a file upload API. Right. So now let me move on to the next topic, which is also most important. So other authentication. Authentications. Authentication types. And this is another important thing which we need to understand. Whenever you're accessing some APIs, right? Some production APIs or some real-time APIs. So definitely there should be some authentication. Okay, we have to provide some authenticated information and then only we will able to access the APIs. Okay, but if you're creating your own APIs, no authentication is required, but sometimes whatever the APIs you are trying to access from the different companies or different portals, you need some kind of authentication. It can be token, or it can be API key, or it can be username and password. So different type of authentications are available. Okay, so now we will see what are the different types of authentications are available and how we can use those authentications in the Postman and what kind of authentications are supported in the Postman tool. Okay, so if I just look at here, if I just take any request, right, if I just go to authorization section, here you can see different type of authentications. So whenever you're sending some request, depends on the API. So some APIs will support API key authentication. Some APIs will support bearer token. Some APIs will support basic authentication, digest authentication, Auth1, Auth2. And these are the different type of authentications newly introduced. Hawk authentication, AWS, NTLM, Akamai, these are different third-party authentications which are included in the Postman. So these are all different type of authentications. And we cannot use every authentication for every kind of API. It depends on how the APIs got designed. And based on that, we will try to use particular authentication. And even this information also the part of your requirement. So at the time of designing the API, what kind of authentication should be provided for that API will be decided, and which is also part of the requirement. Accordingly, we have to use particular authentication type. Okay. So now we'll see what are the different type of authentications and how we can use these authentications along with the different type of request. So we cannot apply all kinds of authentications on single API. So we have to take a different kinds of APIs to test different type of authentications. Okay, so we need to just understand what are the different type of authentications and how we can apply them on the API request. So if you just look at here, no auth is nothing but no authentication required. So we can directly access the API and API key. So sometimes we have to generate the key to access any API request, or then we have to generate some key, and by using that key, we will able to use that API. And some APIs will work based on the API key. And then bearer token. So this is another type of authentication. And we need to generate some token. So if you have a proper token, then only we will able to access the API. And then we have a basic authentication, digest authentication. So in both authentications, we need username and password. Basic authentication and digest authentication. Both we need username and password. And the basic difference between these two are in basic authentication, the data will not be encrypted. Whereas in the digest authentication, your username and your password will be encrypted and internally using some kind of hashing algorithm. And accordingly, your username and password is more secure than basic authentication. But both are required, username and password. And Auth 1 and Auth 2, these are the third-party authentication. And to provide these kind of authentications, companies will acquire some third-party tools. Like suppose, let's say there is a company and they have developed some APIs. And to provide those APIs to the public or to provide those APIs to the external world, so they want to add some kind of authentication. And Auth 1 and Auth 2, these are all third-party authentication. So they will contact some other third-party companies, and they will add these kind of authentications to the APIs. Okay, and this is a very lengthy process and also more secure authentications, Auth 1 and Auth 2 authentications. So how exactly these authentications internally work, I will explain. And setting up the authentication, this type of authentication is also very tricky stuff, and because this will be changing from one application to another application. So taking this kind of authentication, we need to have some developer account for that particular application. And then we have to create a different kind of apps, and then we have to get the client ID and secret ID. And by using client ID, secret ID, then we have to generate a token. And then by using the token, we will be able to access the API. So there are different sequence of steps are involved to use OAuth 1 or OAuth 2 authentication. OAuth 2 is a other version of OAuth 1. So previously the old version is OAuth 1.0, and they have done some enhancements, and then they have made as a OAuth 2.0 authentication. So nowadays everyone is using OAuth 2 authentication, not OAuth 1 authentication. Okay. And these are the latest type of authentications they have recently introduced in Postman: Hawk authentication, AWS, NTLM, Akamai. So they are very, very advanced type of authentications, and it's very difficult to find out the APIs which is providing these kind of authentications. Okay, only in the real environment you will able to see these kind of authentications. So even setting up OAuth 2 authentication is very, very tricky stuff, and we need to do so much of settings and everything in the applications. Then we will able to get the OAuth authentication. Okay, I'll also show you practically how we can create all these things. So these are the different type of authentications are provided. So now we'll see one by one practically how we can apply these authentications on different type of APIs. Okay. So here I have already created one small collection. Let me show you. So authentications, and I will share this authentication. You can directly import you in your Postman tool, and then you can work on that. But you have to create your own authentication options. Okay, so sometimes I'm using some tokens and API keys. Those things may not work for you, because you have to create your own API keys and you have to create your own tokens with your account. Okay, and also I've created these things from different type of applications. Okay, so first let us start with the basic authentication and digest authentication. And if you open this request, and these are the some sample APIs which are provided by Postman itself to explore these kind of authentications. But normally it is very difficult to find these type of APIs through internet, and especially they are having some kind of authentication. So API key, digest authentication, basic authentication, so you can easily find out. But there are certain APIs like token, bearer token, right, and OAuth 2 authentication. So these APIs are very, very difficult to find through internet. Only in the real environment you were able to access such type of APIs. Okay, so here I found out some APIs, and some APIs are provided by Postman, and some APIs I have found out some through internet. And based on that, let us try to understand what are the different type of authentications which we can use it. So the first thing is basic authentication. Basic authentication is simple. It's very easy, and we have to just pass username and password. And here I'm sending some GET request and go to authorization tab. So all kinds of authentications we have to specify under authorization tab. So this is authorization. So we need to select proper authentication here. So I have selected basic authentication, and here we have to specify the username and password. So username is Postman and password is password itself. This is a default username and password which is given to this API request. And these are the Postman APIs. They have given these URLs in their document to just export the authentication type. So we will just try to use it. So when I execute this with this username and password, the API is authenticated, then we will get proper response. So let me just execute this and see the response. And in the response, you can say authenticated is true. That means this API is authenticated with this username and password. So whenever you're requesting some resource from the server while passing the username and password, so first the username and password is available in the server or not, that it will check. And if it is true, then the rest of the things we will able to proceed. So this is the basic authentication. So only one time it will check, right? Suppose when you are logging to the Gmail, you are providing username and password. Once you provide a username and password, first the request will go to the server and check whether your email ID and your password is available in their database or not. If it is available, right? So then certain flag will be set, right? Authenticated true or false something. And if authenticated is true, then you are able to log into the Gmail. So similarly, when you send some request with some authentication, and here it is written authenticated is true, that means what? This username and password is valid to test this particular API. That's it. So this is the first thing it will this particular request first it will send to the server, and the rest of the APIs will be supported. So normally you don't test a specific API like this. Suppose if you are testing any application, suppose LinkedIn or Gmail, Facebook, whatever, login is the only one-time task, right? Once you log in into this application, then you will do the other tasks. So the login is the first task. So there your API your API request will be sent to the server, and your username and password is validated one time. And once you log in it, then you will able to perform other actions. So here, this is a specific API which will be triggered whenever you log into this application. So let us assume whenever you are logging into application, let us say this APIs will be triggered. And whatever the username and password you're sending through UI, and the same username and password will go as part of request to this particular API. And then this will validate whether the username and password is valid or not, and then return the status as authenticated. If it is authenticated is true, then we are able to proceed further, and we are able to test further. So that's how these authentications work. Yeah. So this means, yes, this username and password is already registered with this particular application, right? So that's the reason it is saying authenticated true. And if you provide something else here, and then authenticated should be false. Okay. So this is how we need to just test the API. So with the basic authentication, simple basic authentication is nothing but what? We have to specify username and password. That's it. And before using this, we have to register this username and password with this application, and then only we will able to test it. This is a sample URL which is given by Postman itself to just explore basic authentication, and very straightforward, nothing new in this. Just we need to select the authorization, basic authentication, provide username and password. So basically the request, we will authenticate by providing username and password. This is one type of authentication. And sometimes we should also use basic. This is a basic authentication. There is one more request is also there, and I'm also going to show you. Okay, so first of all, let me open the UI. And when I open this application, see here, this is giving some window here. And when you pass data here, let's say admin and admin, and when you click on sign in, and then you will able to see the request is successful. Congratulations, you must have the proper credentials. So this is the basic authentication actually. through UI, we are able to validate. And same thing we can do through API also. This is the URL, get request and say basic authentication and provided username and password, admin and admin. And when you send this request through the Postman, then you will also get the same kind of response. So you can just look at here. This time it is returning HTML form of response. And also you can see the same message, right? So you can see this is a message we have seen on the UI. The same message we can see on the response body. But this time it is returning the entire HTML format of response. Sometimes it may be HTML or sometimes it may be XML file, depends on how API is got designed. But whatever the response we got after successfully done, so we got the same thing here in the response, and 200 OK is successfully done. So this is how we can just test the authentication of API by passing username and password. And some APIs, if you want to use, we have to pass username and password, basic authentication. And then only we will able to run this and we will able to see the response. And we have another type of authentication, digest authentication. So digest is nothing but it is almost similar to basic authentication. The difference is the digest authentication, the username and password will be encrypted and then sent to the server. So that is the basic difference between these two. So let me share a small presentation so that you can understand. Yeah, so basic versus digest authentication. So basic versus digest authentication. So this is a client application, this is a server application. How this basic and digest authentication works. So in the first step, we are trying to request a resource. Suppose something is there in the server and we are looking for that and we have sent some request. Then the server will ask you to provide username and password. So then we provided username and password. Right, in the third step, we provided username and password. And then server will return the requested resource. So there are 4 steps are included here. First step, we are requesting the server to provide some resource. And it is asking for the username and password. Then we provided username and password. Then it is returning the requested resource. This is the same process in basic and digest authentication. But in the digest authentication, what will happen is, whether it is whenever it is asking username and password, in the third step, we are sending the username and password, right? So this username and password will be sent to in encrypted format. So and be encrypted format. So that is a digest authentication. So digest authentication is more secure than basic authentication. So internally, the encryption techniques will be used, especially in the digest authentication. There is specific algorithms will be used, but both will use username and password. This is basic and authentication. So if I just look at this request, and this is also provided by Postman itself, and here you can just go to authorization, and here you can say type is digest auth, and username and password I provided, and the password is again same password. And you can also use these APIs because these are the APIs which are available to everyone. So when I use this digest authentication, you can see some more fields here. You can see advanced fields, but in basic authentication, we haven't get these fields. Okay, so let me show you what are those fields. So you don't need to bother about these fields because Postman by default send these fields along with your request. Just we need to pass username and password. Okay, and then these fields will automatically send through Postman itself. I'll show you how the Postman will send these fields. First of all, let me send the request. So once you send a request, now your digest authentication is successful and it is returning true here. Authentication is true. But without passing these fields, right? So how digest authentication works? So if I just go here, header section, you can see some information which is automatically sent by Postman itself. So Postman is sent some data from here. Okay, let me show you that. Here. So we can see something called here, relay, nonce, algorithm, QOP, right? So these details we can find somewhere here. Just run one more time. Okay, so you can just look at this. So when I'm selecting this option, okay, so we are selecting this. Without selecting this option, what happens is these details, see here, there is one option checkbox here, disable retrieving the request. Okay, so while selecting this option, I'm sending the same request. Now observe what happens inside the body. When I'm sending the request, you can see unauthorized. You can see something called unauthorized. So why it is giving unauthorized? Because when you're selecting this option, so you can just go to the header section. By default, these details are passing. Realm equal to users, nonce equal to some key here, and QOP is equal to some more. So this information is automatically captured by Postman at the time of sending the request. So we are disabling it actually. So yes, disable retrieving the request means what? We are basically disabling this information before sending the request. So we are getting the responses unauthorized, right? So now if we just enable this, now what happens? These headers details will automatically send along with the request. So these details will automatically fill here in these input boxes. Then the request will automatically send. So Postman will take care of this information. So we don't need to bother about these fields, even though they have additionally provided here. So we need to just uncheck this box so that these fields will automatically send through Postman itself. And then if you send this request, so in that case, you are not able to see the same fields now again in the header section, because we are already sent those fields along with the request. And now my request is got successfully done. So this is how this digest authentication works. Okay, so even though they have provided some fields here, so we no need to pass all the fields, especially when working with the Postman. Okay, but if you're working with some other tools, right, you may or may not. That depends on how the tool is provided this functionality. So here the Postman is taking care, but if you're using some other tool, probably you have to pass the details or you may not have to pass the details. This is a simple another type of authentication. This is called digest authentication. So this is having some additional options along with the basic authentications. And when you execute this API's request is successfully done. Okay. So this is a one more type of authentication called digest authentication. And these are very straightforward, basic and digest authentication, because just we need to pass only username and password. Now the next one is bearer token authentication. So especially in the real-time applications, most of the times they will use either API authentication or bearer token or OAuth authentication, depends on the type of API. Okay, so let's see this particular API. This is basically GitHub repository API. So GitHub is also provided different type of APIs. And just go here, GitHub APIs, or I can say GitHub REST APIs. You can just Google them. You can find GitHub related APIs, because even in the GitHub also, all the different type of operations will be done only through APIs. Okay, so you can just look at here resources in the REST API, and you can just explore different type of APIs are available, and every action will be done through API itself. And especially I'm looking for repository related APIs. And here you can see different guides. Let me find out some API which is related to a repository. And they have given the complete documentation also in this. Just we need to follow the document and use it. Here you can see there is a repository, and these are the different requests which are available for repositories. Click on the first option called repository here. Right, so now you can see these are the different API requests they have provided to work with the repository. So various operations we can do on the repositories through APIs. There is a lot of documentation is there, and they have given some examples also. So I will explain what is the kernel later. And this is basically different request and what are the request parameters we have to pass for the authorization, all these things. And when you send this request, what kind of response you will get. So this information is available in this API documentation. These are all GitHub related APIs. So to access this GitHub APIs, we need to create a token, which is bearer token. Authentication is required. So to create bearer token, so first we need to log into the GitHub account, and we have to generate our own token, and then we will be able to use the token in your Postman tool. Okay, so let me show you how we can create the token. So first of all, we need to log into the GitHub repository. Okay, so I already logged into my GitHub repository. So you can see here, these are all my different repositories which are available. So what we need to do is we need to go to the profile, or you need to go to the settings here. And in the settings, here we were able to create our own token to work with the GitHub APIs. So go to the settings, and here go to developer settings. There is an option called developer settings. Right, so just click on here, developer settings. And then you will be able to see three options here. OAuth apps personal access token. And some API requests required OAuth. That is OAuth 2 authentication is basically. And some APIs are required this, and some APIs are required personal access tokens. Especially repository specific APIs, we need access token. And if you want to access any user specific APIs, then we will have OAuth 2 authentication. So we will see this later. So for now, I'm just selecting personal access tokens. So you can just look at here. I have created two different tokens earlier, and they are having no expiration. And if you want to create your own token, just click on the generate new token. So you can just click on here. This will automatically generate a new token, and it is asking for the password. Let me just provide my password. So then whenever you click on the personal access tokens, generate a new token, then it will ask you some data here, some note, some description, and when this should be expired, you have to select, and what are the permissions you want to give to that particular token. So if you select only repo here, so all repository operations you can do by using that token. And if you want to do any administration task in the GitHub, then you have to give the privileges on this administrator options. And there are various options are there, like deletion or delete repository. Okay, and project specific permissions. There are so many types of permissions are there. You can just provide required permissions and then click on the generate token. So once you click on the generate token, so then it will able to provide the token. So we need to provide some text also. I say my token 123. I'm just giving some name and say generate token. So once you click on it, then it will able to generate the token. So it's a note already been taken. Okay, let me just give something. Let's say testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, so once it is done, so now you can see this is the token you will be able to generate. So this token you have to use to access GitHub related APIs. Okay, now you have to generate your own token because these tokens will not work for you. So you have to generate your own token, then you're able to use it. So now this is a token which we can use to access Git repository. Suppose now I have one API here, and if I send this GET request, which will give you what are all repositories which I have created in my GitHub account. So if you want to retrieve the data, you can send this GET request. Okay, so I'm just sending this GET request. I'm passing some authorization also, and this is a token. So whatever token we just generated, you can just specify the token. And I already have multiple tokens, so I'm just passing one token here. And then when you send this request, which will give you what are all repositories which are already created in my GitHub account. So you can every repository having some ID and a name of the repository, and some other names will be there. So a lot of data is there for every repository. So you can see here, these are all the different repositories which I have created. These are the different repositories which are created in my GitHub account, because I'm using my own token, so which is giving the repositories only from my account. So if you are using your own token, then you will get the different repositories available on your GitHub with your account. So this is how we can just use token. So you can just pass one token here, and then you're able to authenticate your API. So some applications will support token authentication, which is also called bearer token authentication, and through which we're able to authenticate your APIs. So this is one type of authentication. And then we have another type of authentication called API key authentication. And if you want to access any API, sometimes we need to pass API key. Key is required. So here I'm using some application. So I think this application you cannot access. You can access, but you need to create your API key. I'll tell you how to create API key, and you have to create your own. So what you need to do is you need to just go to this website. This is a application, openweathermap.org. Okay, and this is providing so many weather related APIs. Suppose if you want to get the weather of particular location, right? So suppose I'll provide some country name or city name or some location, and which will return the current weather information on that particular location. So that's the actual functionality of this API. So this is provided by some third-party application. This is openweathermap.org. So this is a company. They are providing so many types of APIs, but not all of them are free. And there is one or two APIs they are just providing for free, and that too probably some APIs are available for 1 hour, some APIs are available for 8 days or 40 days, something like this. And these are the different APIs they are provided. One call API, and current weather data, and daily forecast, last 60 days of data. So like this we can provide. If I just go to API documentation, I'm using this one called 16-day daily forecast data. And this is the API request call. So here we have to pass multiple parameters, LEAT, LON, seed, continent. And if you want to understand these keywords, they have clearly mentioned each and every keyword along with the description. And to understand these keywords, we need to go through the description, and accordingly we have to pass the data here in the request. And if you want to use these APIs, we have to create an API key authentication. So API key has to create. So to create an API key, first of all, we need to sign up to this particular website. Okay, so once you sign up to this website, then we will able to create our own API key, and that too, it is temporary key. It's not permanent key. Just a few hours or few days we can use that particular key. Otherwise, we can't. So, and most of them are paid services, and paid APIs are available in this website, because so many other organizations also trying to use their APIs. So we can just do it. So I'm just using this API request on my Postman tool. This is my request, and I provided required information also. And here I'm just giving some city name, which is Delhi, and whichever city you passed here. And even in the parameters also, you can pass here. So from here you can pass. So whatever parameters are added here, query parameters, everything is added to the URL automatically. Right. So this is a city name you can specify, and whichever city you want, so you can just specify. And rest of the details, a default I have copied from their website. And this is a GET request. And to authenticate this request, we have to pass API key authentication. Okay, API key authentication. So now we need to go to authorization. So here we have to select API key, and the API always, whenever you are using API key and a value pair should be there. So what is an API key? You have to say key name and a corresponding value. So this the key name is app ID. This is a fixed. Okay, we should not give any other name here. Whenever you are using API key authentication, there should be some key and a value. So both you should have. So this is API app ID, and this is the value which we have to provide. And these two should be part of your query parameters, because after question mark, whatever is come here, that is called query parameters. So now let me run this. And here you got some response. So whatever city we provided, which is Delhi, we provided. And in this particular city, it is just returning the weather condition. So weather condition sense, a lot of things it will provide. If you're able to understand the response, you can understand. So a lot of other details also, like city ID, city name. Okay. And I think there are some full form is there, coordinates, I think, LON, LET. So latitude, we have some mathematical calculations. Accordingly, it is displayed. Country, population, time zone. So a lot of things are displayed here. So this is all about weather related information, which will display. And this API will return this response. And this is API, which is authenticated through API key authentication. When I say API key, we have to pass key and a value. Both we have to pass as part of authorization. So this is another type of authentication, which is supported. And the next one is Auth2 authentication. Okay, so first let us see how exactly Auth1 and Auth2 works. So Auth1 is a older a version, and Auth2 is the latest version of OAuth authentication. So if any company want to use this kind of authentication, they will approach some other companies. The third-party companies will be available, so they will provide this kind of authentication. Okay, for example, let's say I have a small company, let's say WhatsApp is there, and WhatsApp, they want to use Google feature, like Google location we can share through WhatsApp. So for that, what you have to do, the WhatsApp is basically using the Google Map API, right? And WhatsApp is using Google Map API, but the API is owned by Google itself. Similarly, suppose if we have an API, if you want to provide some authentication, OAuth authentication, we cannot directly provide. So some third-party company, we need to associate, and they will provide some kind of authentication on this API. And that is called OAuth authentication. So here, let me show you how exactly these authentications internally work and what is the basic difference between OAuth 1 and OAuth 2. So nowadays, almost every application is using OAuth 2, not OAuth 1. Okay, so it is already upgraded to OAuth 2. So if I just look at this, I think you are able to see the screen or not. Okay, so OAuth 1 and OAuth 2. So if I just look at this OAuth 1, this is the process. And we have two entities here, consumer and service provider. So service provider is nothing but what? Whoever is provided the APIs, right? Or whoever is owner of the APIs, they are called service provider. And consumer is nothing but whoever is using that API, called consumer. Let's assume, let's say Google Maps is an API provided by Google. So Google is a service provider. And let's say WhatsApp is using that Google Map feature, and WhatsApp is a consumer. So like that. So service provider and consumer. So how exactly these things will work? So OAuth 1, OAuth 2 almost same, but in OAuth 2, the first two steps are got removed here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps are there. But here we have only 6 steps. The first two steps are got removed in OAuth 2 authentication. And how is going to work internally? So fetch request token, and then service provider will issue the request token, and then consumer redirect user to provided for authorization. Then it will again go to service provider, user grants authorization, and again redirect the user back to the application and exchange access token. And again, that will go to the service provider and grant access token, and then connection will be created. So whenever you are trying to access an API, all the steps will go through first. We need to first get the token. You have to send the request. They will send one token. Again, we will send the token, and they will authorize whether the token is correct or not. So here multiple layers of communication will happen. But as a user, we can't see all these things, what is exactly happening internally. But OAuth authentication is a kind of an algorithm, internal algorithm. It will authenticate user based on different type of information. Okay, and token is also part of it. Even OAuth 2, OAuth 1 is also having a token, but that's not a direct token which we have created just now in the GitHub. So in the GitHub, we directly created the token and we have used the token to access the API. But in OAuth 1 and OAuth 2 also, we have a token, but the token will be generated by the client. We will generate the token our own. So these are the first two steps are gone. Now in the OAuth 2, first consumer will request something, let's say redirect user to provider for authorization. So whenever you want to access something from the API, whenever we want to use that API, we will first send something to the service provider. What information we have to send? Client ID and some secret code also there. So client ID, request URI, a scope. So some information we have to send to the service provider. So this will happen in different steps. And then the service provider, user grants authorization. So here service provider, we have to pass some information to the service provider. And then user grant authorization, redirect user back to the application and exchange for access grant, then grant access token and create a connection. So this is actually internal process, a very high level. I will tell you mainly 3 steps. So first we need to pass something called client ID and a secret ID. So that information we have to pass to the server, and that server will basically authorize your information, like whether your secret ID, client ID is correct or not. And once it is authorized, then it will return one token for you. And by using that token, you have to authorize the API. So mainly 3 steps are included here. So within one step, you cannot do this authentication. We have to pass 3 different steps. So now let me show you practically how it is going to work. In the step 1, so I have already created here. So you can just look at this. So step 1, step 2, step 3. So OAuth 2 authentication will happen in 3 different steps. Okay. So the first step is what? We have to request users. Here, this is actually GitHub repository only, but we are passing something here. So you can just look at here. I'm passing some client ID. So client ID I'm passing to the GitHub. So let me just clarify this, how we can work with this. Okay, let me take the pen. Okay, so let us say this is my GitHub. Okay, and it is providing some API for us. And this is our client. This is our client, and we are trying to access GitHub API. In the first step, okay, in the first step, we have to pass the client ID. Okay, client ID we have to pass. And what GitHub will do? GitHub will check, okay, the client ID correct or not. The client ID is correct or not. So it will validate. If it is right, then it will send you one response. Okay, it will send you a response. So what is the response it will send you? It will send you something called secret ID. Okay, and along with some information. And again, we have to send this information to the server. That's the second step. And the third step, it will return the token. So this particular token we will be able to use. So before getting the token, even in the OAuth 2 also, we will have a token, but this is not a bearer token. So before getting this token, we have to go to 2 more steps. First, we have to send the client ID, then it will give you some information, secret ID, something like that. And again, we have to send that information, and then it will give you token ID. And that token ID we will try to use to access the API. But how to create, how to get client ID, all these things. And the GitHub, we have to create one app. Our own app we have to create. Even if you not only GitHub, if you have a Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, okay, on all these applications, if you have a developer account, okay, if you log in as a developer, you will have some more access, not like a normal user. So you will have some additional access. And with that developer account, you will able to create your own app. In these applications, you will able to create your own app. So while creating your own app, they will provide you the client ID and the secret ID. So these are the 2 informations they will provide you. So I will show you how to create this in the GitHub, but it will not be the same in every application. It keeps changing. In one application, in another application, the process will be different. So while creating this app within these applications, they will provide you, after creation of this app, they will provide you the client ID, secret ID, and so on. And these details we have to use to work with the APIs. Okay, so I will show you step by step how we can create that client ID and so on, and accordingly we will able to use it. Okay, so this is the first step. So step one is what we are sending the request along with the client ID. So once you send this request along with the client ID, then what will happen? So we will get some kind of a response here. Okay, let me just show you the screenshots. So because this is a complex process, I have taken all the screenshots so you guys can follow the same thing. So as I said before, we need to get the client ID and so on. So what we need to do is we need to log into the GitHub with your normal account, and we need to go to the profile settings, and we need to go to the developer settings. Just now I have shown you, right, how to create a normal bearer token. In the similar way, we need to take. So you can just look at here. There is one option called OAuth apps. So if I just go to OAuth apps, here you can see one app here. This is created by me. We already created. So if you want to create a new app, you need to just click on the new OAuth app. So let me open this app, whatever I created. So for this app, which is given client ID and also client secret. So this information will be given. But when it will give, when you create your own app, then this information will be revealed here. And you need to save this information somewhere so that you can use that information in your Postman to authenticate your APIs. So the client ID and also secret, client secret. So these two informations you will get whenever you create an app for that particular application. Okay, so that information we have to use as part of your request. So now let me share this. So I've just created a new GitHub account. So by clicking on this new GitHub app, so we have to create a new app. And once you click on it, then it will ask you one more screen, register a new application. Just click on this. And after that, we need to provide some information here. So application name and homepage URL. So I'm just giving localhost 3000 port number. And then this is a callback URL. So same user, same URL, but /callback you have to say. Then click on register application. And once you register your application, then you will get the client ID. Okay, and after getting the client ID, so you have to generate client secret also. This is also required. So we need to click on this button, generate a new client secret. So once you click on it, and then same information we have to provide. And after that, you will able to see the client ID along with the client secret. So these are the two important details which are required in the step one. So we need to note down the client ID and the client secret. So this is all about setting up the app in the Google GitHub. So if you do this process, then only you will get the client ID and the client secrets. So these two you will get only if you do this process. And similarly, if you go with any other application, even if there is Google Map, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, you have to go to developer settings and you have to create your new app. And then only you will get the client ID and the secret ID. Okay, and now the next step is what? We have to send a request. And when you're sending the request, we have to use OAuth 2 authentication. Okay, so for that, what you have to do, step one, we have to send this URL. This is a GitHub. This is again, I got everything from the their documentation itself. So first step, we have to send a GET request. So when you send this GET request by passing this client ID, so you will get some response. Okay, so once you send this request, then you have to open the same URL on the browser also, because again, if you want to work with this, you need to again start your Tomcat server. So if you have already installed XAMPP server, because I have given localhost column 3000, right? So you should run this Tomcat server. So this should always up and running. Then only the URL will work. So this URL we have to send through the browser along with this Postman. If you send this Postman also, you will get proper response. And you can also send this through application URL. Then your client ID authentication will be successful with your GitHub. So you can just click on authorize. Your username will be there, and then this URL will be authorized. And once it is done, so then it will also give you some code here. This code is also required in the URL. When you're sending this authorize, this Pavan OL training is your username, GitHub username. Once you click on it in the URL, you will not get any page here, because at the time of calling this URL, my Tomcat is not running. So I think in your case also, it is not possible to run this. You will get this code from this URL, and this code is also required. Right. So then in the next request, we have to send a post request. So in the first request, when you send the first request, what we get here? Code. So this code is required. Now in the second request, we have to pass 3 items: client ID, client secret, and also code. In the first request, we have sent only client ID. And by sending the client ID, we got the code also. Now in the second request, post request, we have to send a client ID, client secret, and code also. And when you send this as parameters, then you will get the access token. So this is actually OAuth 2 access token. And by using this access token, we will able to access other GitHub APIs. Now these two, first and second request, is only for getting the Auth 2 token authentication, only Auth 2 token. To get the token, we have to do step 1 and step 2. And these are the URLs not for getting any resource actually, sorry. So step 1 and step 2 are not exactly requesting any APIs. We are just trying to generate OAuth 2 authentication token. For that, we are sending step 1 and step 2. First request and second request. We are sending those 2 requests only for generating Auth 2 authentication. Token we have to get. Once you get the token, then you can use the token to send other request by using OAuth 2 authentication. So if I just look at here in my Postman, this is my first request. I'm passing some client ID here. So when you send this request, and you will get some response here. So this is the HTML response you got. So you can't perform that action at this time. And probably this client IDs got expired. And yeah, so once you have done this, you have to open this through browser also. Let me open the browser. And you need to get the code, right? What I said, code. So you can see here, this code you have to copy. And this particular code you have to use in the second request. Go to the second request, and you have to provide the client ID and the client secret. These 2 information we will get at the time of creating the app. Then we have to provide the code also. We have to provide all the information. And when you send these 3, then it will give the token. So when you send this request, then it will provide the token. So it is giving some error because my Tomcat is not properly running. Let me just start running this. Stop it. And you need to correctly copy the code. So let me just stop here first. Okay, I think by already I have used this multiple times, so it is not giving. Okay, I have already taken the screenshot, so I'll share that. So here you can see, once you send this request, you will get the access token in the response. So once you get an access token, now we can use this access token to access other APIs from the third request. So here the third request is what? Use this token to access API. So I just want to print a list of users which are available in my GitHub app application. So I can just provide the user name here, and I'm taking authorization is 2.0, and this will exactly give you the user information. So you can look at here. So this is the, whatever username I provided here, the same username it is displayed. So these are the users currently accessing my GitHub application. So if we create one application, there will be multiple users. So this is the user currently accessing. And similarly, if you want to print all the list of users which are accessing the application, then I created one more request here. So use this access token to access API list of all users. So this is a URL I've sent. Authorization is OAuth 2, and this is a token. It is not bearer token. This is a Auth 2 authentication token. And how we have generated this token? We have to do 2 steps. The first step is what? We have to send the client ID to this request, and then we will get the code. And second request, we have to pass client ID, client secret along with the code. Then you will get the token here. And that particular token we can use in all other requests. So this is step-by-step process which we have to use for authentication, Auth 2 authentication. So here we have to pass the token. So if you just specify the user's / username, which will give you only one specific user information. And if you want to see all other users, list of users, then you can send this request along with this OAuth 2 authentication with available tokens. And when you send this, this will give you all other users information. So here is one user, and there is other users also there. So multiple, these are the default users. They are using my GitHub application. Okay, so this is how, if you have this token, so anybody can access the GitHub application or GitHub APIs. So these are the APIs which are accessed by these users. Whoever is having this token, but generating this token should go through different steps. Step 1, we have to send a client ID. Then we will get the code. In the step 2, we have to send client ID, client secret, and the code. And then it will give you token. And then that is a token, Auth 2 token, which we can use it for accessing other APIs. So this is the process involved. If you take any other applications, the process will be different, but the steps will be the same. First, we need to send a client ID, right? And then we will able to get the client, we will able to get the code, client ID and secret, and then we have to pass again those 3. Then we'll get the access token, and then that token will be used to access other APIs. So the process is same, but the based on that application, the steps will be different. It will not be the same step for every kind of applications. And this is very more sensitive because if you are working with real-time applications, sometimes your account also may be blocked because you are using some username and password, right? In that application, and you are trying to create one app and you are trying to create access tokens and you are trying to access some type of APIs. Okay, but you can create your own, and you can access, you can create your own client ID, you can create your own secret code and everything, and then you're able to access these APIs. And I have created all the documentation here. So all 3 requests I have sent and list of users, and you can just go through this document, just try to understand how we can do this. But I don't recommend everyone to try this because it needs a lot of steps. And again, if you find any issue in between, so it is very difficult to figure out again. Sometimes maybe your account also may be logged for some time. So please careful and do it, because these are the real applications. And when you do something in this app, especially Gmail or LinkedIn or Facebook, right, you need to have a developer account. So whatever user you created, by default, you can get the developer options. Just you need to go to settings and advanced settings. And just like a GitHub. So I have just go to GitHub account, right? So here you can just go to your profile and you can just go to settings and you can see the developer settings here. So in every application, developer settings will be provided. And in the developer settings only, it is possible to create different apps. And again, some applications will support OAuth authentication, some applications may not support, and depends on our applications, we need to create a OAuth authentication. Okay, just for understanding, just have it with you. And all these details again will be part of your requirement document. Okay, developer will say everything, how to set up and how we can get this authentication. Even these authentication details also they will provide you. So you don't need to worry about all these settings. Okay, sometimes if they have not provided, so you can just, they give some document to you. And you can just follow the document accordingly. You can create your own tokens, and then you're able to access your APIs. So either they will already created something and they will share their tokens to you and you can use it, or else they can just give some documentation and accordingly you can just create your own token and then use it in your API testing. So that's how things will happen. So everything comes from the design and requirement. You no need to bother about how we need to create and how much complexities and what are APIs require this authentication, what are APIs are not required this authentication. So you don't need to bother about this. Everything will be part of the document. Okay. So this is how we need to use authentication. So these are the most popularly used authentications. Some other authentications are also there, but they are recently introduced these authentications and we do not have any access on this for now. Hawk Authentication, AWS, NTLM, and AKMH. So there's a new latest type of authentications they have provided. And even they have not specified more about this information in their document. So probably in future, we may use this authentication, but as of now, they are not much important. So mostly, many times we use these type of authentications, either API key, bearer token, basic or digest, or OAuth 1 and OAuth 2 authentications. Okay, you can just know how to use this authentication, that is enough. But internally, how the authentications will work. Okay, what are other information is required? So all other things are not required because they are exactly implemented by using certain number of algorithms. So they will take care of. That's a responsibility of the developer. So our responsibility is what? So we just know what kind of authentication is supported by this API. So accordingly, we will choose proper authentication and then we will test that API. Okay. So these are all authentications, different type of authentications supported in Postman tool. You can try the rest of authentications, but I don't recommend to try this OAuth authentication. This includes a lot of process. It takes a lot of time. And even if you do something wrong, again, it is very difficult to figure out. Okay. And this will be different from one application to another application. It will not be the same process for every application. But once you get a client ID, right? So from there, the process is same. So first you need to get the client ID. Then in the next request, you have to pass client ID, client secret and code. And then we will get the token, and that particular token you can use for rest of the request. That's how we need to work with the OAuth 2 authentication. Okay. So this is all about authorizations. Okay. So now let me move on to the next topic. There is something called curl is one topic we have to discuss, and the second thing is called Swagger. Okay, so these are the two topics which we are going to discuss now. So curl and Swagger. So sometimes when you see API related documentation online, you can see these two terms, curl or Swagger. Okay. So we need to understand what is curl and what is a Swagger. So first, let us try to understand what about the Swagger, and then we will try to understand about the curl. Swagger is, definition wise, if you say Swagger is basically interactive documentation. Interactive documentation. So what is an interactive documentation means? So we know about documentation. Documentation is nothing but what? Document. Documentation is nothing but what? If you have something, right? Suppose, let us say I have designed some APIs, or developer is designed some APIs, right? And if you want to provide information about those APIs, and we need to prepare some document. So if you want to understand something, we need to document it. So normally when you do documentation, what are the tools we use? We use MS Word or most of the times we use MS Word document, or sometimes we have a PDF files. So to document it, right? They are all static documentations. Okay, because the content is always static. And if you need some modifications, you can do it, but still the document is static. They are not interactive documentation. So Swagger is nothing but a interactive documentation. So suppose some APIs are developed by the developer, and developer want to share some information about those APIs, like what is the request URL, what kind of authentication it support, what kind of response body, what kind of request body you have to send, what kind of response you will get. So all this information, how developer will share. So the developers will prepare something called Swagger document. Swagger. So which is basically called as a Swagger, not a static document. And sometimes you will also have a static document. Like a tomorrow session, I will show you how static document look like. We will also discuss something about e-commerce application APIs in the next session. In that time, I will show you how the static document will be. But most of the times, once the developer is developed the APIs, and to provide the information about the APIs, they will create something called Swagger document. So Swagger is nothing but a tool actually. So by using that tool, they will create a documentation. We call it as a Swagger document, and which is called as interactive documentation. So what is the difference between static documentation and interactive documentation? So interactive documentation in the sense, in the document itself, we will able to do some kind of a testing. In the documentation itself, we will able to do some kind of testing that will interact with the server. and we can send an API request. We can get the response and we can check something request and response correct or not. We can do some kind of a checking or testing. That's called interactive documentation. So let me show you one simple documentation, like how Swagger document look like. So there are so many Swagger documents you can find in internet. So I'm just going to show you a sample Swagger document. Let me go to the browser. Okay, so this is a fake REST API. So they have given some kind of a Swagger document here. You can just look at this. So Swagger document looks like this. And not only this, there are so many APIs, Swagger documents are available in the internet. And this is a Swagger document look like. So this is a fake REST API. So this is the name of the API they have given, and they are providing so many things like activities, others, books, okay, and cover photos, users, different type of APIs, and every API is having different type of request, get request, post request, and put request, delete request, different type of requests are there. So this is called Swagger document. Okay, this is called Swagger document. And before testing the APIs, actual APIs, we will able to go through the Swagger document, because this contains a detailed information about your APIs. Okay, so how we will try to understand this, how it is an interactive document. If it is a static document, we will just read the information. That's it. We can't do anything else. But if it is an interactive documentation, we will able to interact with these APIs. For example, so let's say I have an activities API. And if I just open the first one, so get request, and you can see it is giving a lot of information. And what is the information it is giving? It is not required any parameters. Okay, and when you send this request, in the response, you have to get the 200 is a status code, and success message you should get. Okay, and in the response, you will get this format. This is a format of response. And this is the basic information they have given. So by using this information, we will try to understand how exactly this API works. And that is fine. So we understood something here, but how it is interactive. So we can also send this request directly from the Swagger document. Okay, if it is a static document, we can't do anything. Just we will read this information. Accordingly, we will prepare our test cases. But it is a more interactive documentation. So what else we can do here is this Swagger document internally again connected to the server. Okay, so we will able to directly send the request from this Swagger document. So here you can just click on the try out it. Suppose I want to check these APIs, how it is going to work. Okay, what kind of request we have to send, what kind of response you will get if you want to know in reality. So this is just a documentation. If you want to see how exactly it is going to work, just click on the try it out, and now click on the execute. So now observe here, the request is already sent. Now we got something here. So this is the response we got from the server. We got this different type of activities list. We got it here, and server code is 200. And this is the actual request URL we have sent. This is a request URL we have sent. When you send this GET request, we got this response. And these are the different response headers we got. Okay, and what else we have? So we have a 200 is success code. Right, so this is how we can directly send the request through this URL, and we will able to see the what is header, what is the response body, what are other details, everything we will able to see in the Swagger document itself. So that's the reason we can call it as a Swagger document. And now you can see something here. So there is something called curl. This is the request URL. Everybody will know that. So if you send the same request in the Postman also, we'll get the same response. So let me just go to the Postman. Okay, and let me just create one more collection. Okay, so I'll name it as Swagger. Okay, so inside the Swagger, I'm just sending the new request, add request, and here Swagger get request, and I'm passing the same URL which is given in the Swagger. Now when you send this, you will get the same response here. Okay, so this is called interactive documentation. So here itself we can do some kind of a testing, not exactly testing. We should not do any testing on here, but we can explore the API functionality. Okay, we can explore the API functionality, like what kind of URL it is sending and what kind of response you are getting, what kind of response code we are getting. Based on that, we will write our test cases. And that's the reason we can call it as a interactive documentation. Similarly, every API request, you will get some options here. Suppose here, I want to get some information. Let's say here, there are some other APIs also there. So here you can see this is a GET request, and here book ID we have to pass here. When you pass book ID here, and then you will able to get the book information here. Okay, so now let me just send some information here. Book ID. So how to get this book ID? We have to try it out. So click on this try it out, and here we need to just pass some book ID, and accordingly which will give the information. So book ID is required. So what I can do is we need to just provide some number, random number, click on execute. Yes, now you can see it is book ID is 1. This ID is 2, 3, 4 is giving. ID book is 1 here, not first ID. You have to select the second one. ID of the book is 1. So this is the response which is giving, and this is the request URL. Request URL. And this request URL, if you just copy in the Postman directly, and then you can send the request, you will get the same thing, same response. Okay, so basically the Swagger is for what? It is used for exploring the APIs, not exactly for the testing. So many people will ask the interview question, like what is the difference between Swagger and Postman? Right? Because we are able to send the request, we are able to see the response, everything we are able to see in the Swagger also. But why we need to go with the Postman again? So why it is needed? So there are so many differences out there. So one main difference is in the Swagger is used only for exploring the API, not for testing purpose, because this is just a document. But in the Postman, we have to exactly do the testing. And the second thing is, in the Swagger, we can't put any validations. We can just check manually response is coming or not, but we cannot add any validations here. We cannot add any tests here. But in the Postman, we can add number of validations on the response. And the third difference is in the Swagger, if you send some request and get the response, we cannot save these results. We cannot save these results anywhere else. We cannot generate any reports out of it. But in the Postman, we can also generate the reports. Once you send some collections and once you run your multiple collections, we will able to generate the HTML reports also. But in the Swagger, it is not possible. So Swagger is only for documentation, just for exploring the APIs. But Postman is only for testing purpose. Okay, so we should able to test the APIs. We should able to generate the reports. We should able to save the API request. But those things are not possible in the Swagger document. So we can just go through each and every request like this, and you can just observe each and every request, how exactly they are working. So this is a Swagger document. So first initial stage, you will have a hard-coded document. It will be in PDF format or MS Word document, initial stage. And once the developer is developed the APIs, and once they are ready to test, then they will prepare the Swagger document. So they will just share the link to you like this. So this link will be shared to you. They don't provide any hard-coded document. They will just share the link. And by using that link, you are able to access your Swagger APIs. So you can explore here. You will know more about the functionality and what are the parameters you have to pass, response, status code, everything you will get to know by seeing or by exploring this Swagger document. Okay, that's one thing. And the next thing is when you sending any request in the Swagger, okay, I'm just sending some request here. Try it out, click on execute. So your request is got sent. Now we got some response also, right? And something it is showing like curl. So what is this curl? Sometimes in API documentation, they will provide the curls. They don't directly provide the request URL. Okay, some documentations, they don't directly provide the request URL. Instead of that, they will provide something called curl. And the curl is nothing but what? Which is contains a URL along with the headers, information, authentication, everything is a part of one curl. So normally when you send any request in the Postman, now I can just observe here. So we are sending the URL, request type, and if there are any query parameters, authorization required, we should also add them part of this request. Okay, and then we will get some response. So multiple things we have here. While sending the request, we have a request type, URL, authorization, parameters, so many things are there. And sometimes body is also required if it is a post and patch request. So these are all things we required. But what is curl? Curl means what? Curl is a consolidated string, like which contains everything. So if I just look at this curl, this is a curl for this particular request. So if I just copy this curl is nothing but a client URL. The full form of curl is what? Client URL. Sorry. Client URL. So what is this client URL? What is the use of this client URL? Sometimes in your API documentation, instead of providing all the details, just they will give you one curl for every request. So if we get the curl here, what is the use of this curl? Let me just try to execute this curl. Curl is nothing but a command actually. So this command is available in every operating system also. So if you execute this in your, so currently I have executed this request, I got some response here, right? And when you send this request in the Postman also, we got the same response. Now I'm trying to run this curl in my command prompt. See, open your command prompt and just copy the command curl as it is and press enter. Now you will get the same record here. Same response you will get. So same response you will get in the console window also when you're sending the curl request. So what does that mean? What is the use of this curl? So instead of providing multiple details like what is the request, what is the URL, what are the parameters and everything, they will just consolidate them into one single statement. And that is curl. So this is a curl. And by using this curl also, we can create a request. So if you copy this URL, we will able to create the request in Postman. Directly you can post it here and you can send the request. Suppose if you're not having this URL and you have a curl with you, then how we can create a request by using the curl? You can just copy this curl as it is. Okay. And go to your Postman. Now by using curl, I'm going to create a request. Okay. By using the curl, I'm going to create a request. And sometimes the curl is available in the documentation. Okay. So how to create a request by using a curl? You can just click on import, and you can see something called raw text here. Okay. Go to the raw text and here we have to paste the curl. Whatever curl you copied from the document, just copy here and then click on the continue. And now we got the URL from the curl and then import. So now you can see the same request is got imported from the curl. Now, if you want to save this, you can just click on the save and it will ask you in which collection you want to save it. You can just go to my workspace and whichever collection you want to save, select the collection and then save it. So now from the curl, we are able to create a request. Again, this is the same request. From the curl, we are able to create a request and we are able to send the request. So Swagger document is also having curl. So if you know this curl, you will able to get the request and then you're able to send the request. So when you copy this curl into Postman, by default, you will get the URL. And if there are any other authorization or any parameters, headers, bodies associated with this URL, by default, you will get everything into this body. So let me just copy some curl for post request and then we will see how it is going to copy. So let me take a post request. Okay, this is my post request. Okay, and for this post request, we need to get the curl first. So let me just try it out. Okay, and click on execute. And it is giving some curl here. So you can just look at here. When you send a post request, we should definitely send some body, right? So this is the curl information they have given. So just copy this curl, go back to the Postman and again, go back to import and go to the raw text and specify the raw text here. And also you can see which includes the entire body also because it's a post request. So just say continue and then import. See now, this time we got a request and also along with the body, everything we got. So just we need to pass some information here and then send the request and you can save the request. So I want to save this request under Swagger collection and then saving it. So if you have a Swagger document, you have many ways to get the information about the APIs. So you can directly import these APIs in your Postman by using curl, or you can directly explore this API, how these APIs are exactly working. You can explore the functionality of the APIs by using this Swagger document. So that's the reason we can call it as a interactive documentation. Interactive documentation is nothing but what? We can directly send a request, get the response, and check that all parameters are correct or not. So, but we don't use this for testing purpose. This is just for exploring the APIs. So for testing the APIs, we have to use Postman tool. And this will also provide the curl URLs. And by using this curl URLs also, we can import your request into your Postman. Then you will able to test it. Okay, so that's the most important feature which is available. So Swagger is more interactive documentation, and which is also contains the curl. And by using the curl, we will able to get the request. Okay, so this is fine. This is one type of documentation, and this documentation is available before starting your testing. Okay, so after you conducted your testing, you have created more number of collections and you have created many number of requests. So now your testing is completed. For example, your API testing is completed. Suppose we have done books API testing earlier. Okay, so we have created multiple collections, we have created multiple requests, we have sent required parameters, and you have tested all the APIs. After completion of your testing, now I want to do some kind of a documentation. So normally we do, right? So even if you do function testing also, as soon as you are completed your testing, you will prepare some kind of a document, like what kind of test case you have executed, like what are the scenarios you have tested. You will just produce some kind of a document. We will call it as a summary document. Similarly, once you completed your API testing, right? And to make understand this API request to others, we will create our own documentation. Like what are the collections we created, what are the requests we created, and what are the things we have tested. We will create our own documentation. And if we provide the documentation to others, they will exactly know what exactly we have done in the API. So to create the documentation, we have the options in our Postman itself. So this documentation is for after completion of your testing. So now let us say books API is done, testing is done. Now we need to create a documentation for this. So what you can do is we can just click on the three dots, and you can see one option called view documentation. Click on this option, then you can see detailed documentation of your books API. So how many requests we have sent under this API, books API, all the requests will be captured here, and every URL will be captured here. And what body we have sent along with the request, it will be noted down here. So everything will be shown in this document. Everything will be shown in this document. So this is the documentation. We can create the documentation of your APIs also. And this is after testing. And again, this documentation we can create in different formats. Suppose if you are using Postman, SOAP, right, these type of tools, normally we create the document by using HTTP, because these all URLs we can directly send through Postman. And suppose if you want to create using curl, suppose I don't want to directly give these URLs, I want to provide the curls for every request. Then you can select the curl option here. And now the documentation will provide the curl also. The curl information also will be provided. So refresh it. So we need to just select the curl here. And you can just open the request also. When you click on the open request, the same request will be opened on your as part of your Postman. So I think it should select curl also. Okay, so 1 second. So this is a view documentation. And once the document is available, so currently you can just look at here. By default, it's giving HTTP. And we can also publish this document. Suppose if you want to publish this in some portal or some in workspace or common place, what we can do is we can just click on the publish option here, and then URL will automatically generated for this document, and that URL you can share it with somebody else. And this is a documentation which we created after completion of your testing, not Swagger document. Okay, this is our own document we prepared after completion of your testing. So these are few options which are available in Postman. So you can just explore this. One round of exploration is enough. And you need to understand the Swagger also. I will give you some URLs, Swagger URLs. So you can just explore them. Then you will try to understand about them. So this is the URL, one URL. Let me just provide you some more URLs. So this is one more Swagger URL. You can just go here. So this is a pet store swagger.io. So this is another type of Swagger document, and you can explore this. Yes, you can just publish here. You can see there is an option called publish here. So once you click on this publish, your entire document will be saved in your workspace, and it will automatically generate the URL also. So by using that URL, you can share your entire collections and everything. But that's only documentation sharing, not your exact collections. Okay. So if you want to share these collections, that is again different option is there. So in the tomorrow session, I'll show you that, but this is just only documentation. Okay. So you can just go through these Swagger documents along with this and try to explore it, because this is the most important document to understand more about APIs. And I will also show you the static document. Before getting the Swagger, initially we'll get some static document which contains all API functionalities and so on. Right. So I'll show you that also in the tomorrow session. But meanwhile, you can just explore them, and rest of the things we can see tomorrow. Okay. So Swagger documents. All right, so I'll share this document on file upload. I'll share one document. At authentication types also, I will share one document. Just go through them and try to explore this Swagger and curl and so on. So tomorrow session, we will see how we can export the collections, how we can run the collections in multiple places, and remotely how we can run our collections, how we can share the collections to somebody else in the team. So we will see some other options in the Postman tool tomorrow session. Okay, so I'll stop here for today's session and we will continue tomorrow.